Good morning, everyone. Welcome after a break. We are doing chapter 2, and there are different kinds of artificial method of reproduction in plant and vegetative propagation in plant. Now we have completed all these things: vegetative propagations and artificial method of reproduction. Now we have to look at the sexual reproduction in plant. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. We are on page number 20. Sexual reproduction in plants. For the sexual reproduction, we need two different sex to reproduce. Today is 19. The topic is see, most of the plant we see around bear flowers. We see flowers in a plant, and these flowers are the reproductive part of the plant. Flowers are the reproductive part of plant. These flowers are borne on shoot and serve the reproductive part of the plant. They bear male and female. Flower has male and female part. Female part. Both the parts are present in flower. Reproductive cells which on fusion produce seed. After fertilization, they produce seed, and these seed after fertilization and these seed and after development they change into fruit. The flower is the reproductive part of the plant. To understand this, have a look at the structure of flower. Structure of flower. See, see, the part which is attached to the shoot is known as stalk. This part is attached to the shoot is known as stalk, or the another name of stalk is pedicle. The tip of the stalk is enlarged. This is the tip of the stalk is enlarged, is bigger in size, and flattened area has from where the petals and other part arise. And this flattened part is known as thalamus. It is known as thalamus. And from this, there are all four whorls of flower arise from here. These are, we can see a small green leaves like a structure develop here from here. This is the first whorl and they are known as sepals. They are known as sepals. This is, these flattened part of the stalk is called the thalamus, and the flower has four whorls of the flower. The flower has four whorls. It means the outermost whorl, after that there is a one more whorl, then one more, and then one more. There are four layers, and this outermost is known as calyx. Inner to the outermost is known as corolla, and then third whorl of flower is androecium, which is a male part of a flower. Androecium, and the innermost is a gynoecium. These are the four whorls of a flower. So we have a look at all four whorls in this. The first outermost layer whorl of flower is sepals. These are green in colors. These are green in color. Part of flower forming a whorl of tiny green leaf like structure called sepal. These are the green leaf like structure and they are known as sepal. In the bud condition, when the flower is not fully matured, they are in bud condition. These leaves cover the whole part of the flower and protect the flower from the surrounding. In the bud condition, they enclose the inner part of the flower, providing them necessary protection. Sepals are green and outermost part of the flower. After that, the second whorl of flower is known as corolla, and these corolla are made up of different leaf-like structure which are colored and fragrant, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the collectively known as corolla, but individual they are known as petals. They are known as petals, and these petals are colored. It forms the second inner whorl arranged next to the sepal. This is. Usually petals are white or colored. They may be white or colored like yellow, red, purple. Rarely green. These petals are rarely green. They are not generally in green in color. Rarely they are in green color. The petals make the flower attractive. These petals make the flower attractive. And the third whorl is androecium. The third whorl is androecium. This is. It is known as stamen. It is known as stamen. This. And the male part of flower is known as stamen or androecium. The third whorl of flower is known as androecium, inner to the petals, and this is inner to the outermost is the calyx, then corolla, and inner side of the corolla there is a layer of male reproductive part which is androecium, consisting of delicate thread-like structure called the stamens. This is thread-like structure called this structure stamens. Each stamens is formed of a long, narrow, thin filament. It's a long, narrow, and thin filament. This is known as filament. filament, and there is a lobe-like structure and a broad sac-like bilobed anther. Here is a sac-like structure and this is bilobe structure. It is known as anther. The name of this structure is anther. The anther. Each anther contains 4 pollen sacs. These anther contains 4 pollen sacs. They have 4 pollen sacs. In each lobe has 2 parts and these 2 parts has total 4 pollen sacs are present in anther, in which the pollen grains develop. In this pollen sacs, there is a development of pollen grains. The pollen grains contains the male gametes, and these pollen grains contains male gamete. Stamens are the male reproductive part of the flower. Here is the fourth whorl and the important part of flower, which is gynoecium. And this is the this is the female part of the flower. This is the female part of the plant, and this is divided into 3 parts. The first is stigma at the top. From this, this stigma joined with the ovary with a tube-like or a filament-like structure, and that is known as style. This is thin tube-like structure is known as style, and at the base, a swollen part of this style is known as ovary. This is known as ovary. It consists of the carpels. The other name of this female part is known as pistil or carpel. The whole structure, stigma, style and ovary, all together are known as pistil, and the another name of pistil is carpel. Carpel form 3 parts. Swollen ovary at the base. This is swollen ovary at the base. A narrow thread-like structure is called style, and a terminal expanded stigma. This is the terminal at the top. Expanded is stigma at the top. Carpels are the female reproductive part of the flower. This carpel and pistil is the female reproductive part of the flower. Okay, then ovules. These are the small rounded bodies present inside the ovary. There are rounded present in the ovules. Each ovule contains egg cell which later develop into a seed after successful fertilization. And these small rounded body are known as egg present in the ovary. After getting fertilized, they form seeds. Flower bearing both male and female part are called. This is the structure of flower. Now, in some flowers, there are both the reproductive part are present, but in some cases, only one part of the one reproductive part of the flower is present. See, unisexual and bisexual. Unisexual flower and bisexual flower. Bi means 2, means both the reproductive parts are present. the reproductive parts are present. And this type of flower are known as bisexual flower, while those bearing only one unisexual flower. Uni means one, means only one sexual part is present. Only one sexual part is present in some flowers, and that type of flowers are known as unisexual flower. It may be, yes, yes, tell me. Anyone want to say something?
No, no, ma'am.
Okay. Unisexual flower, it means having only one sexual part. It may be stamen or it may be carpel. If there is a stamen is present, and that type of flower are known as staminate. Staminate flower. And there is a absence of gynoecium or pistil. In case of only pistil is present, only pistil is present, then the flower are known as pistillate. Only the female part of flower is present in a flower, that type of flower are known as pistillate, and the only the male part of the flower is present in a flower, that type of flower are known as staminate flower. This is clear to you, unisexual flower and bisexual flower. Now the next is function of flower. It is the reproductive part of flower plant. Flower are the reproductive part of the plant. A flower contains male part are known as stamen, and the female part is known as carpel. The pollen grains from male part are transferred from this male part of the plant is stamen, and stamens produce pollen grains. These pollen grains are transferred by air, by insect, or by any other mode of transformation to the female part of the flower. These pollen grains transfer to the female part of the flower. This transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma is called pollination. Is called pollination. Write the definition of pollination, which is given in the box at page number 21. Pollination is the process in which,
Okay, ma'am.
yes,
No doubt, ma'am.
okay. Pollination is the process in which the pollen grains from the anthers are transferred to the stigma of a flower of the same species is called pollination. What is pollination? We see the anther and filament. There is a stigma of a flower. Stigma, style, and ovary. These stamens produce pollen grains, and these pollen grains transferred from anther to the stigma of a flower. Transformation of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a female part of the flower is known as pollination. say pollen grains. Pollen grains. ठीक? Then there are two types of pollination. There are two types of pollination. One is self-pollination. Full self-pollination means is that occur either within the same flower or between two flowers on the same plant. See, what happened in this? It's a flower, part of flower. It's a part of one flower. From one flower to the pollen grains transferred from the anther to the stigma of same flower, right? This is part of, it's the flower and part of flower. From this stamen to the stigma of this flower, the transfer of pollen grain from the same flower to the stigma to the anther, and from the anther to the stigma is known as self-pollination. Or the another flower of in this plant, the another flower of this plant from the anther of this flower, pollen grains transferred to the stigma of other plant, other flower is also known as self-pollination. In between the one flower, in between the one plant, there are different many flowers present. Yes. Do you want to ask?
No, ma'am.
See, what is self-pollination?
No, ma'am.
There are many flowers in one plant. There are many flowers present in the one plant. If the pollen grains of this flower transfer to the stigma of this flower is known as self-pollination. Or the pollen grains of this flower transfer to the stigma of this flower is also known as self-pollination. Here, the pollen grains from the anther may fall on the stigma to same flower or the stigma of another flower on the same plant are known as self-pollination. And the other type of pollination is cross-pollination. Here is a one plant bearing many flowers. And there is another plant bearing many flowers. From and pollen grains of this plant are transferred to the another plant to the stigma of another plant is known as cross pollination. Cross pollination occur between two flowers on different plant of the same species. If it is rose, then it is also would be rose of the same species. This is the process of cross pollination. Agent of pollination. What are the agent of pollination? For cross pollination to make place, an agent has to be available. These agents can be
अरे मैम unmute your mic.
okay. When the pollination is done by the insect is known as insect pollination. Some insect like butterflies, bees, and other insect visits flower to get nectar. To get nectar, when an insect is slide on a flower, when the insect sit on a flower, the pollen grains stick to the mouth. The pollen grains stick to the mouth of the insect, wings and legs. These pollen grains stick to the part of insect like mouth part, legs, wings, etc. When this insect move towards the another flower of same species, the pollen grains from its body may fall off. These pollen grains may fall off on another flower. And this is the process of insect pollination. And the example of insect pollination is marigold, dahlia, and salvia are some of the insect pollinated flowers. They are insect pollinated flower. Example of insect pollination is marigold, salvia, and dahlia. These are the example of insect pollination. Characteristics of insect pollinated flower. What the characteristics does a flower has? These flowers are large with colored petals. The characteristics of flower is flower may be large or large with colored petal. They have colored petals to attract insect. These are scented to that insect locate the flower by smell. They have a fragrant smell. They have smell. And due to this smell, the insect attract towards the flower. Sending. Then these contains nectar as food. They contains nectars as a food for the insect. They have nectars and this nectar is food for the insect. Then the fourth characteristic of this is these produce sticky pollen grains so that they may stick to the body of the insect. Sticky pollen grains. The characteristics of pollen grains is sticky pollen grains. So they may stick to the body parts of the insect. They have sticky pollen grains. These are the characteristics of flower, insect pollinated flower. The flowers are large and have colored petals. They are scented, having fragrant smell to attract the flower. They have nectars which is used as a food for the insect, and the pollen grains are sticky in nature. We are on page number 22. Okay, here is the activity. Honeybee with its body covered with pollens. Here is the picture. Have a look this activity 6. Visit a garden, especially in the season when flowers of various plants are blossoming. When the flowers are blossoming, try to locate insect pollinated plants. Go and see the plant where is the insect pollinated flower, such as marigold, mustard balsam, dahlia, and snapdragon, and appreciate the variety of colors of the petals of their flowers. We see a large number of butterflies, bees, etc. hovering over the flower. They are hovering over the flowers because of their bright colors and the sweet fragrance that they produce. Given here a picture of honeybee, which is covered with pollen grains. The white spot shows the pollen grains. In the picture, we see the entire body covered with pollen grains. The body of honeybee is covered with the pollen grains. We therefore presume that these bees has returned after visiting and alighting over the flower in a mustard field. When these bees visit other flower of the same kind, there is every chance that pollen from its body may fall on their stigma. These bee visit to the another flower and leave the pollen grains at the stigma of another flower. This is exactly what happens in case of the insect pollinated flower. This is happened in the insect pollinated flower. Apart from the color, there are other features of the flower too which attract the insect and ensure pollination. This is all about the agent of cross pollination, and which is insect pollination. And the another thing is wind. By the wind, the process is done with the wind. When wind is the agent of cross pollination, and the pollination is known as wind pollination. Some plant like maize, palm, pine, etc. produce dry pollens. In this uh, type of pollination, the pollens are dry in nature, so they can move from the wind, and they are in large quantity. The pollen grains are in the large quantity. When these flowers mature, the pollen grains get blown away by the wind. These pollen grains may fall in all sort of places, and same may even get wastage. These pollen grains scattered all over the part, and when they get the same kind of flower, they get fertilized that type of flower, and some pollen grains get wasted also. So the number of pollen grains are large in amount. But if they happen to fall on the stigma of a flower of the same type, when these pollen grains are happen to fall on the stigma of same flower, they get fertilized, and the pollination of this type is known as wind pollination.
1 minute.
Characteristics of wind pollination we will take in our
1 minute.
next class.
Okay, ma'am.
If you want to ask any question,
No doubt, ma'am.
everything is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we will do this. Only 2-3 points are there. The characteristics of wind pollinated flower are they are small and are dull color. They are having dull colors and small in size. And the next characteristic, they have long anthers. They have long anthers producing out of the flower so that pollen grains may get blown off. They are long. They are having long stamens. Stamens are long and coming out from the flowers. This is the flower and they are coming out from the flower so that they can blown off with the wind easily. They produce large quantity of pollen grains. These pollen grains are large in numbers. The pollen grains are light. The weight of these pollen grains is very light so that they can easily carried away by the wind. These are the characteristics of wind pollinated flower. And the last agent of pollination is water, which we will see in the next class. If you want to ask
Okay, ma'am.
any question, have you any problem?
No, ma'am.
Okay, write
No
the
doubt,
definition
ma'am.
of pollination, self-pollination, cross-pollination, and description, brief description of
What, ma'am?
agent of cross.
What, ma'am?
Definition of pollination, then self-pollination and cross-pollination, and brief description of agent of cross-pollination. After that, we will take the topic in next class. Have a good day.